Now, this relates heavily to my life in that I did not grow up with a great understanding of all the stereotypes that were associated with women. And so, for example, women aren't good at math, but I essentially taught myself how to do math. Hello, hello. Welcome to Gratified Grad, where it's my goal to help you graduate with gratification. This channel is for people who are looking to walk in their purpose, live healthier lives, and prepare for their education. So in today's video, it's actually going to be an older video of me that I recorded that I had uploaded to my previous YouTube channel. Yes, I had a previous YouTube channel. Don't go searching for me, okay? Because most of the videos are gonna get transferred over to here anyway. But without further ado, here you go. Hi. So this is gonna be a book review on Whistling Vivaldi, How Stereotypes Affect Us and What We Can Do by Cluade M. Steele. This book was amazing, to be honest. So this has been a long time coming. This took me about a year and a half to read, and that's because whenever I'm reading something that really resonates with me, it takes me some time to read it because I'm really taking in the different points that the book is providing me with. And so Cluade Steele is a social psychologist. I'm checking the book. Yes, he is a social psychologist, and he currently works at Columbia University. His work is amazing. It's on why Black students have trouble succeeding. And he just goes into all these different experiments, and he just beautifully writes out the process in which he takes to answering these questions and how each experimental result leads to the next question. I think that his work really does show the experimental process. There are portions in the book where, of course, you can't answer all questions, or you'll get results that kind of leave you wondering, or the experiment that you're asking has a flaw or design in it. And he addresses all of these things, and he also exposes you to other people within the field who he has worked with. So this book, I highly suggest it. Is a must read. So I'm gonna get into it a little bit. So if you want to read the book yourself, then pause it here and then go read it, and then we can talk about our experiences while reading it. But so I'd never known the term stereotype threat. I was familiar with stereotypes, but I never really felt like I ever fit into any of the stereotypes. My exposure to stereotypes were the racial stereotypes, to be honest. So angry Black woman, Black people can't swim, just those stuff like that. And as I've grown older, I've realized and come to understand the reasons behind those stereotypes, but that's for another conversation. And so I realized in reading this book that I had a stereotype threat in terms of my academic studies. So I didn't necessarily have a stereotype threat exclusively to me being a Black person. And I partially would like to say, and I'm talking about my undergraduate career at Steele University, which is a historically Black college and university, where I didn't necessarily experience the racial stereotype threat because my race was not a contingency in which I felt like made up my identity. Contingencies are, and I still have a hard time explaining this, but they're factors that would cause you to question yourself in the sense of, is this occurring because I'm Black? Is this occurring because I'm poor? Is this occurring because I don't have the educational background that this other person has? And so me being Black at an HBCU wasn't a contingency that resulted in stereotype threat. But what stereotype threat I did experience was the fact that I was in a place where I was a science major, so I majored in biology in undergrad. And in my mind, and I would also like to note that a lot of stuff that he says in this book is psychological based. And so in my mind, that I had to be good at science. I was a biology major, chemistry minor, so I had to be good at those things. And I did not do my best because I was fighting. And in the book, he describes it as you're slaying a ghost. And so I was, in his terms, slaying this ghost of I really needed to be good in science and chemistry. I needed to make those A's and B's. And so because part of my mental energy was going towards the fact that I felt like I needed to make these certain grades, I couldn't focus on the material. I couldn't learn as my counterparts were learning. But put me in a class that was not related to science. So I took a psychology course that they actually recommended I didn't take because the course was meant for major psychology students. And I was like, no, I'm interested in psychology. I like this course. I'm going to take it. I don't care if it's for psychology students. And I made an A. Same thing happened in a public health course that I took. It was for public health majors, and I made an A. And now, mind you, on both of these courses, there were also students who were in those respective majors and they were struggling through the course. So me realizing this, I said, okay, it's not the fact that I'm Black. It's more so the fact that I'm not meeting the you chose this as a major, so you should be good at it stereotype. And so reading through the book, that's just an example of one of the realizations that I made and was able to identify it and put a name to it. And so I just kept having these moments of wow and looking through the studies and things like that he talked about. So as I read, and as a side note, when you're reading a book, engage in the book. And by engage in the book, I mean underline portions of it that really stand out to you, that really mean things to you. And so I'm going to pick a portion here that that stood out to me that I just randomly flipped to the page. If you care to know, it's page 136, about middle of the page. And the portion here that caught my attention was, quote, critical mass is not a precise term. It's difficult to peg it to a precise number. O'Connor, who was one of his colleagues, for example, enjoyed a sense of critical mass. I'm sorry. O'Connor is not one of his colleagues. O'Connor was the first female justice court member. She was a female by herself. Anywho, I'll start over. So, quote, critical mass is not a precise term. It's difficult to peg it to a precise number. O'Connor, for example, enjoyed a sense of critical mass with only one additional woman on the court. And that I found very interesting because now that I'm in this space at Penn State where there's not many people that look like me, I've realized that my critical mass number is about 10. And that's because I have intentionally placed these 10 people around me. And as long as I see these 10 people, I feel good. I feel safe. And so that it's interesting because I didn't know critical mass was a term, and critical mass very much so depends upon the person. Some people might need to see someone who looks like them whenever they're walking down a hallway, whereas me, like I said, as long as I see about those 10 people within the week, I'm good. So yeah, once again, I would highly suggest reading Whistling Vivaldi, how stereotypes affect us and what we can do. He not only provides information on stereotype threats, but he also provides some tangible, actionable steps. I've said this before, I love books that provide tangible, actionable steps that you can then implement in your life. And especially to the administrators out there, if any of you all are watching this, use it, right? The information is out there. use it to make better, use it to do better, use it to make people more comfortable, to bring people who typically wouldn't envision themselves in the academic setting into the academic setting. So, with that being said, good luck. And so, I just want to point out a couple of things about the book. One, if you are an administrator, if you are a student, if you are a parent, pretty much if you're anybody, you should read this book. It tells you a lot about yourself, your impact on others, as well as just how other people view the world. And I think it's very valuable information that it gives. Now, me being a scientist and from a researcher perspective, he beautifully goes through the process of research. So he talks through, where did he get his initial question from, in which the question of this book originally starts off with, why do African American students underperform? Because the long-standing philosophers thing is that white people are innately smarter than black people, which is not true. But of course, when you live in a world where no one has done any other research otherwise, you don't really have anything to back up your points. And so that is what Dr. Claude Steele does, and love it. I also want to note that Whistling Vivaldi is a part of the Issues of Our Time series, which is something that is edited by Henry Louis Gates Jr. So this book with this symbol here means that it's a part of a series of other books that also address issues that we have in our society right now that people aren't talking about but should talk about more. And so, but going back to the book, he really lays out the process of his research. He talks about his initial question, and he started with the stereotype of women aren't good at math and black students or black people are more athletic than whites. And it was just very profound how he was able to, in controlled settings, prove that these stereotypes were true, but only under conditions in which you put that person under that stereotype, meaning you tell them that this stereotype exists. Now, this relates heavily to my life in that I did not grow up with a great understanding of all the stereotypes that were associated with women. And so, for example, women aren't good at math. Well, one, I went to a school where there were a number of women math teachers, as well as the fact that I taught myself math. Like I had a teacher in middle school and I just could not understand the way that she taught math. So I literally took the textbook, went home and taught myself the lessons the day before class. And all she did was like fill in little holes and gaps that I had in the lessons the next day. But I essentially taught myself how to do math. Anywho, so he dives into the fact that he can put this stereotype on people who initially wouldn't have it. And it's literally something as simple as seeing an ad on TV before you go and take a test. So what he does, one of the studies that he does is he shows college students who are known for their strengths in math. And before he gives them this difficult math test, he shows them a TV ad where the woman is nurturing a child and staying at home, and the man is out working and making money and things like that. And so then those students go and take the math test, and they do worse on the test than compared to the girls who weren't shown this advertisement. Whoa. Talk about implicit Like just seeing an ad affects that, right? So then he pushes even further to figure out, well, what can be done to resolve this? Like, how can we change the way that these people are seeing themselves unconsciously? And so then he did a different study where he told girls that, this is a test that shows taken by men and women do equally fine. Just pretty much affirming their abilities, and these women do just as well, if not better, than their male counterparts on the math test. And so there's a couple of points in the book that he makes, and I want to just pick out a couple that I saw while reading that I thought would be very beneficial to people who want to make changes in their environment. A big implication of the Crozet's, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, team's finding, a big implication to the Crozet's team's findings is that a mind trying to defeat a stereotype leaves little mental capacity free for anything else we're doing. So multiple people have gone and looked at that finding and found that if you're being distracted, right? We know that being stressed is a distraction, and we know that that causes you to perform differently. Okay, well, being under stereotype threat is also a distraction, and that also causes you to perform differently. So what if you don't know you're even under stereotype threat? As an administrative person, you want to increase the number of women that are in your engineering program, right? So you say, oh, we've accepted all these engineering women students and they're all going to come into our program, but they keep leaving. Well, just because you accept the women does not mean that they feel comfortable, does not mean that the implicit signals, the implicit messages that you're sending them is showing them that they're wanted, is showing them that they're valued. So his solution to that is, if you want to change the dynamic of a group, you have to change the external surroundings of that group, the culture of that group, right? So places that are inherently diverse, you have to look at what is different from these inherently diverse groups compared to these groups who that are a bit more inclusive or exclusive. In the sense of, it's only fitting a certain group of people, in which that means that the dynamic of your organization needs to change. So you would need to seek out places where women are comfortable and see, what do those places look like? What is discussed in those spaces? How are women treated in those spaces? It definitely requires someone who in that administrative space to either be a woman, or the person in that administrative space to take a step out of their role as an administrator and step into that space where women do feel included. And then he ends the book on a bit of a positive note, on quite a bit of a positive note, and saying that you don't have to remain in this space of feeling threatened, right? So it's all about what is your form or your way of escaping this threat of the stereotype. Some people, they escape it by disproving it, or what they feel is disproving it. while others escape it through negative habits and negative things. So, one, I would like to say that I hope that you escape stereotype threats through identifying the fact that they do exist, and then figuring out, how do I positively change this threat, right? How do I positively remove this threat? Stereotype threat is not just a black-white thing or a poor-rich thing. It can be a simple stereotype threat that you've put on yourself, or that, the expectations that you think are out there on yourself or on you. And that being said, like I said before, for me, the threat was, I'm a science major. I should do the science. I should be good at the science. And so now I have the knowledge, and I've thought through to come to understand that that was what it was. That was stereotype threat. And so now, as a graduate student, still experience stereotype threat on the occasion, just as anyone would in any new setting where they're trying to figure out their footing, trying to learn their place in their space. For me, it's been key in creating my own space. So that meaning developing relationships with people that I trust. And that's regardless of color. My advisor is a white woman, and I trust her. I know that she has my best interest in mind. So I've learned how to create a space of people who I trust, and that's where I put my energy. That's where I put my focus.